At the time, pill mills were a big deal. Legitimate narcotics that are prescribed to people are being diverted for illicit use. This is 2010. And at that time, we were averaging 7 deaths a day in the state of Florida. I worked 2 really good cases on doctors. First doctor, we were doing surveillance at the clinic. This car pulls in and these 2 guys get out. They weren't in there very long, maybe 30 minutes at the most. And when we stopped them, they had prescriptions for 33 patients, none of which were there, obviously. It was just the 2 of them. The typical script was oxys, Xanax, and ibuprofen. And obviously the ibuprofen doesn't matter. Xanax, there was no trafficking actually in Xanax, but the oxys, that's where you got them. That doctor ended up getting 25 years, minimum mandatory for trafficking.
Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 of this week's episode. Left you on a cliffhanger yesterday, didn't we? That was done on purpose. I'd like to say it's on purpose. I don't know if it was or not. Maybe it's just probably dumb luck on my part. But welcome back to this second part of this week's episode with Rob Hernandez. We're talking about after he's been in the Navy, he's with the Orange County, Florida Sheriff's Department. If you remember the end of yesterday's story, he had just been involved in an officer-involved shooting where he was forced to kill a suspect who was going to try to run over him with a car and was pulling the gun out to shoot him. So in my book, that's a clean shoot. But we were talking about Rob's feelings afterwards that he went home and slept with no problems at all. If you listened after yesterday's episode, you heard my opinion on that I think the good Lord gave him the ability to deal with stuff like that. Not everybody can, but you know what? There's a lot of things that you deal with in your job that I can't deal with or Rob can't deal with. So that's why I say I think God gives us gifts to do certain things, and part of ours is service and being able to handle traumatic events and continue on with our lives. But you were talking to us there, Rob. You were getting ready to tell us, and I asked you to hold on and tell us today. I appreciate you doing that and not cussing me out when we turn the camera off here. But
a whole 24 hours later.
Yeah. We're still in the same shirt. That smells a little right, but we're okay. But let's just continue on with that. Now, you've already slept. You've gone and spoken to your brother-in-law. Have you talked to a psychologist yet?
No, not yet.
So where are you in this process?
So I'm the psychologist has to come into play before I go back to duty, and so I'm kind of dealing. I'm doing better. I've talked to my brother-in-law. He explained a few things. I was starting to deal with things. Now this happened on a Friday. Sunday, I went on an airplane to Milwaukee to teach. So I was mentally busy. I had been teaching by that point. I started teaching that year. I started teaching gang identification. So I had a lot going on in my head. So I was occupied. My mind was occupied with other things. So I'm doing better. So I go to Milwaukee. By that point, my wife comes back from being out of state with the kids. And that's another thing. She called me in the middle of this whole thing. I'm sitting in the car. The guy is still laying on the ground because paramedics came out. Just so you know, it turns out that they had done a homicide 2 nights before. And we didn't know it was them. We knew the homicide. Mm-hmm. We didn't know it was them. So that also played into the whole not wanting to go to jail or going to prison. So I'm still at the scene. She calls me. I tell her I was supposed to go to a concert that night, and she's like, "Oh, you going to the show tonight?" I'm like, "Nah, I'm working late," and that's all I said. She's like, "I'm all right," because she was used to the working late, and so that happens. I go to Milwaukee. I come back. She was already back with my parents. My parents flew back with her. Now, my mom, who, as you remember, worked for Puerto Rico police, right? Mm-hmm. She'd been, by this point, she was already retired after 30 years. My parents knew that every time they come to visit, I'll take a few days off, but then I go back to work. And so they came, and day 1, I was here. Day 2, I was here. Day 3, I was here. Day 4, my mom goes, "Sit down." I'm like, what's up? I'm like,
no fooling mom.
Yeah. I'm like, what's up? She's like, what'd you do? I'm like, what did I do? I'm like, I didn't do anything. What are you talking about? She goes, 4 days you haven't been to work. You screwed up somewhere. You got suspended, didn't you? And I'm like, nah, Ma, that's not what happened. And I explained it to her. And my wife already knew what happened because when I arrived in Milwaukee that day, that's when my name was released on the news. And all she knew was that a friend of her called her and said, there was a shooting, gang unit, and they said your husband's name. So she doesn't know what the heck is going on. So I'm in Milwaukee and she calls me. She's like, are you okay? What happened? I'm like, yeah, I'm okay. I'll explain everything. But obviously I'm alive. So we'll talk when I get back. So I'm going through all that. And, my time comes to go see the psychologist. And man, this lady needed a psychologist more than I did. I mean, she bit her nails all the way up here. I'm looking at her like I'm so distracted because like she's listening to me, but it's, she's obviously in need of some mental health professional herself. Right. And one, we're talking about things and she goes, somehow she goes, are you of a violent nature? I'm like, what? Are you of a violent nature? I'm like, no. I mean, I'm very loving to my children and the people that I care for. But yeah, I shot him and I've been sleeping just fine. And she's like, what? I'm like, I am very affectionate with my children and I love them and they know it and with the people that I love. But I shot that guy and I sleep like nothing. And she's like, I don't understand. And I got up and left.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I just walked away and I went back to work.
Well, you checked that box.
Yeah. And that was more of a formality, man. It's, there was so much stuff going on at that time. We had another unit. We used to call it Auto Trap. And those guys were getting involved in shootings all the time, man. It's, it's like, it seemed like 3-4 times a year and good shootings, but those guys were going after carjackers. That was their job, to look for carjacking vehicles. So obviously there's going to be a violent confrontation. And, so yeah, that was probably, I'll call it the most dangerous because for a fact they were pulling a gun on me, at that time. And then there was everything else that came after that. It's,
is that the only officer involved shooting you ever had?
Me personally, having to pull the trigger on someone, yes. But, okay. I've been in similar situations. It's just, it wasn't me pulling the trigger.
I got to say, moving to Orlando, we had never planned to move here. We planned to retire in Florida, but we figured we'd be over on the coast around Melbourne, Satellite Beach, that area over there. And we came here because our youngest daughter and her family were here, and their daughter is the 8-year-old I was having the fight with earlier today. We were there when she was born up in Virginia and all that. Mm-hmm. And so we thought, well, what the heck? Let's just go down there. And we got other family in Atlanta. But I had no idea. Orlando's known for Disney and all the tourist parks and SeaWorld, and the beaches aren't an hour away. You could be at the beach. I had no idea Orlando was as tough, or as dangerous as it is. I mean, almost every single day, there's a shooting, there's a murder. And I just looked up. I didn't realize the county is almost 1.5 million people.
Oh, yes. The state of Florida in itself is a very transient state. We have a lot of, especially in Central Florida, we get so many people that move here. And then the first 2 years is going to be hard, period, wherever you go. It just that we get so many people that come here, and not all of them stay. So it's a very transient community. And then on top of that, and this is something that I bring up when I'm teaching, is you have people that come from high crime states or cities and trying to be a responsible parent. They want to take their children away from that environment, and they bring them here because Disney World, right? There's no crime.
Right.
But what happens is they recreate the environment that they left. And then on top of that, you had what we call the 3-time losers in California, that they're looking at life in prison if they're convicted of a third felony. So where do they go? They go here. It's similar climate, not as obviously more humid than California, but it's basically California with the exception of the politics, on the East Coast. So that's why we get all these different criminal organizations that come here. Now then you have the ever-growing Venezuelan community here in Central Florida, Brazilian community, Puerto Rican community, and all of that. That doesn't mean anything, nothing specific to those nationalities and their being involved in crime, but it's going to bring that element also, that still have ties to those criminal organizations in, be it Brazil with the PCC, TDA in Venezuela, Los Choneros, which is something that we need to start paying attention to here in the States, which is an Ecuadorian group, which is super violent. So there's a lot of crime.
There's a guy that I need to introduce you to. I'll get you a copy of his book, Wes Tabor. He's going to be He's going to be the guest on the show either next episode or the episode after that, I believe, unless something falls through at the last minute. He's still real busy, but he just wrote a book about gangs, and I just started reading it. I'm about a quarter of the way into it, and he's the ones he's primarily talking. He was stationed in Venezuela as a DEA country attaché, and this was when Chavez, I think, was still in office down there, and they had kicked everybody out of the country in DEA except for the country attaché, 1 agent, 2 secretaries.
Oh.
Now, how effective are you going to be? That's one thing we'll talk about on his interview.
Oh, man. I just read something very interesting about Venezuela and cocaine seizures.
What'd you hear?
I read from one of the sources that I use for research. They were supposedly like seizing all this cocaine in semi-submersibles. And it's a big hit, like a ton, whatever. And then like 2 weeks later, they have another big hit, another semi-submersible. And supposedly it's the same dope.
Build those stats, man.
Yep, it's the same dope. They just put it on a different boat.
How'd that happen?
Interesting.
Wonder whose pocket they got lined on that one and how much they charge per kilo.
Jesus, man. It's crazy.
Third world.
Yeah.
It's very different in those worlds. So did you stay in the gang unit until you decided to move on to another agency?
Yes. So in 2008, the rank structure, you're a deputy first class, corporal, sergeant, lieutenant. I was a deputy first class, and the corporal's exam was coming around, and I'm thinking, man, I mean, do I want to give up my clothing allowance, my unmarked vehicle, my full Indy, because we had full Indy in our vehicles, and full Indy is you have full use of your vehicle on and off duty, and tons of overtime. That was the only thing that was, but I'm making money, and then promote to corporal, go to work midnight somewhere, God knows where in the county, for an extra quarter an hour. I'm like, I can't do it.
That's all?
It was about that. It was about an extra 25 cents an hour to get promoted to corporal, at least at the time. And so my corporal in the gang unit, who was also my teaching partner at the time, he had interned at a state agency before he came to work for Orange County. And he goes, I just went to a meeting, and the state agency, the big initiative for the attorney general is gangs. So they're looking for gang investigators and a state retirement. It's the same retirement as Orange County. All the counties, well, even up in Jacksonville and Miami, I think they're all now having to switch over to FRS. But all the sheriff's offices are in the state retirement system. So it would have been a matter of just, there's no gap in service or anything. It's just same retirement. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, all right. So are you putting in? It's like, yeah, I'm putting in. All right, I'll put in. So we both got hired. We quit the same day. We started the same day at our agency, a state agency. And then that's what we did for the first almost 3 years that I was there. That's all we did, working gangs. But now I left Orange County. I was in the middle of a RICO investigation. It was another hybrid gang. And I walked into my new state agency with a RICO in hand. Now, Orange County my replacement was still the lead because I turned it over to him, but now we're bringing the state jurisdiction. So I'm still working the RICO. And it just so happened that as part of that RICO, we were working a homicide that happened where a kid that was shot and killed in a church parking lot over here on the east side of the county. Well, we go to a meeting with homicide, and when they say the name of the suspect, it is a relative of a relative. Like not related to me, but related to a relative. So I knew the kid, I knew the name. I didn't know he was part of that gang. And I left the meeting. I went to this is actually before I went to my agency. I had a meeting with my sergeant. I said, look, just so you know, this guy is related to this person. And he goes, is that a problem? I said, not for me, it isn't. If it's not for you, it's not for me. He goes, deal. And then the arrest happened when I was at the new agency. So, and that's something that I did. I had I didn't say anything to the family member. But after I said, hey, just so you know, because potentially, just so you know, I mean, I'm the one that ID'd him in the surveillance. And it was, so I told him, I said, look, my name may come up in court. My name may come up in, documents if the family gets documents. So I just don't want to make it an awkward Thanksgiving, just so you know. So, but yeah, they did. When they arrested him, he worked at a business, and there was a Chinese restaurant next to the business. And I wasn't on the takedown team. I was on the surveillance team. And then he came out, and I said, oh, well, that's him. He walked into the Chinese restaurant, and then they did the takedown. They did, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but they called it a Slurpee slam on him. And I'll explain offline later what that is. But
I got things running through my mind now.
It's called a Slurpee slam. It's something we perfected in Orange County. And he was arrested, and then after that, that's when I told the family member, hey, just so you know, my name may come up because, this happened. But so I started with this state agency. From 2008 to 2010, that's what I was doing. I was doing just nothing but gang cases. Basically, at the time, we were like the only two actual gang agents that came over to the agency throughout the state. They had people that were assigned to like gang units in this agency, but we were really like the two that came from a gang unit that had done RICOs and T3s and long-term gang cases. So it was a busy 2 years. I went through a divorce in that process also, separation and then divorce during that process. And then in 2010, I walked in the office one day, a gang agent, and walked out a dope agent. How that happened, I have no idea. But I walked in and they said, by the way, because apparently we solved that gang problem in 2 years, right? We eradicated every gang in the state of Florida. But you know how it is. DEA is a little more specific, but DEA, so fentanyl is the flavor of the day, and heroin was. So for my agencies like that, it's just that it's broader because at the time it was gangs, and then it was a drug diversion. So they put me in a mid-level narcotics squad to work diversion cases. I had experience working dope cases, nothing huge, what a normal local agency would work. So I walked in, I was introduced to the sergeant, great guy. To this day, we stay in contact. He's retired now. He retired as a captain from Osceola County. And I said, listen, I'm not a UC guy. You ask me to do UC, I will do UC. Okay. What I am is I'm a facilitator. I know a lot of people. Okay. And on top of that, I said, because I know the typical local dope agent, most local dope agents don't have the attention span to work anything longer than 5 days. Yeah. So I will take all your dirty doctors and I will do all your long-term cases. And that's what I did for 3.5 years.
And just tell everybody what a diversion investigator does. We've had that on here before, but just
it at the time, the pill mills were a big deal. So they were legitimate narcotics that are prescribed to people are being diverted for illicit use. And this is at the time. This is 2010, and at that time we were averaging 7 deaths to overdoses, 7 deaths a day in the state of Florida. during that time, 2009, 2010. And then we had a lot of what we called pillbillies, which were people from
That's my people.
People from West Virginia and Kentucky and Tennessee, that they would come to Florida because it was just so easy, man, to get prescription drugs. And I worked two really good cases on doctors. One of the doctors, I worked on like a dope dealer, and he got a minimum mandatory for trafficking.
Excellent.
I worked this guy. I worked him for like a year. The other guy I worked for like a year and a half. But this guy that I worked, this first doctor, we were doing surveillance at the clinic, and we're about to call it. And the sergeant's like, "Hey, you want to call it? Nothing's going on." I'm like, give me 15 more minutes. I have a whole squad out in the middle of nowhere in Point Siena, which it doesn't matter which route you take to Point Siena. It's always going to be an hour. You could leave from 2 streets over and it's going to take you an hour to get to Point Siena. So we're sitting there, and this car pulls in, and these 2 guys get out. I said, "Dude, we're here. We're going to wait for those 2 guys to come out." And they came out. They weren't in there very long, maybe 30 minutes at the most. And we got PC for a traffic stop. And when we stopped them, they had, I want to say was it 33? They had prescriptions for 33 patients, none of which were there, obviously. Wow. Because it was just the 2 of them. And the typical script was oxys, Xanax, and ibuprofen. And obviously the ibuprofen doesn't matter. The Xanax, there was no trafficking actually in Xanax, but the oxys, that's where you got them. And it was a couple of guys from Sarasota, Florida. And man, we ended up, that doctor ended up getting 25 years minimum mandatory for trafficking.
Good. Did those guys have out-of-state tags on their car?
No, they were local. They're from, not local, but from Sarasota.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the other one that I worked, yes, that you used to get a lot of out-of-state tags in that one. And one of the, I didn't know it at the time, but one of his patients died in Osceola County, and they were from Kentucky. And so I identified everyone, and, you labeled them a DTO, a drug trafficking organization, like, people selling, trafficking heroin and all of that. And so I started a death investigation, because the way I looked at it, the organization provided transportation, meals, lodging, they provided all of that. So that case took me to Kentucky twice. And the second time we went to Kentucky, I'm with a detective from Osceola County, right? And great guy. And we go out there, but he has to fly back. And I'm not flying back until the next day. So we came in, we did all these interviews. With one of the interviews that we did, it was, the person that we were interviewing, she lied the whole time, and we knew she was lying, and it's a complete waste of time, whatever. So we get back to the hotel. I take him to the airport, and I get a call from the sergeant in that city where we did the interview. And he goes, "Hey, listen, she apologizes for lying to you. She wants to sit down and do a truthful interview with you." And I'm like, Jeez. Dang, man, I'm on my own here. I called it's a different time. It was a long time ago, but we were staying in Lexington, and we were traveling like 30 minutes to different cities. This particular city, everybody's kin out there. They're all related, right? Yeah. So I called my contact at the Kentucky State Police. I said, "Hey, listen, man, this sergeant called me. He said that she wants to do an interview. My partner's gone. He flew back. And so I'm stuck here by myself, and I got to do this interview." He goes, "All right, start driving, but don't go there right away." So I drove, and I parked in a Kroger grocery store parking lot. And he calls me back. He said, "Hey, man, I checked up on that sergeant and stuff. Everything seems fine." And I'm like, "All right, well, let's see what happens." And I'm sitting in the car, and I'm like, man, if something happens to me, because I had heard some stories already while being in Kentucky on my first trip, and then now the second trip.
Well, one question: did you hear banjo music?
In my head, I did. And if I heard them in my head, they were real. And So I called the sergeant and I say, hey, listen, if you don't hear from me by midnight, then call this guy from the state police. He knows where I'm going to be. But I started thinking, I'm like, man, who has the resources to get here quick or have resources around here? I'm like, man. And I remembered I have a family member that did his duty to the country, and he had a lot of connections, doing very specific jobs. And I said, listen, I called him up and I said, listen, bro, if you don't hear from me by midnight, something went bad and I need somebody to find me.
Come and get me.
Yeah, roger that. No problem. So I remember I get there, we're meeting like in a little substation that's in a county or city complex, but it was a government complex. And I pulled up and I parked. There's nobody there. And I'm like, there's no way they're going to catch me in my car by myself. They're not going to sneak up behind me. I get out. I specifically took my gun out of my ankle holster, put it in my waistband, and I found a crack in between two buildings. And I stood there, right, watching the parking lot. And they get there. The sergeant gets there with this chick that we're interviewing. And I gave him, it felt like 5 minutes, but I probably gave him like 2 minutes. I came out. We go in, we do the interview. I didn't get kidnapped or anything. I'm alive. And at midnight, I'm texting my family member, hey, it's all good. I'll give you a call tomorrow. So the next day, like, hey, man, thanks for looking out. Everything went fine. Obviously, I'm fine. And he goes, that was a good move. I'm like, yeah. I mean, I figured call somebody that could get resources out here. He goes, nah, man, that going in between the two buildings and putting your gun out from your ankle holster. I'm like, bro, you are scary. He said, it's a government complex with cameras everywhere. So
you're kidding.
Yeah. He's like, we had eyes on you.
Wow.
Yeah. So I love that guy to death.
Oh yeah. He gets a free bottle every year.
Oh yeah, man. That's the man right there. And that's the time I thought I was going to get kidnapped in Kentucky again, because I had heard some stories already, on my first trip there. But I did that. I did mainly diversion for about 3.5 years.
It's very stereotypical, those kind of stories, because I worked in West Virginia for years and years up there in Virginia. And you don't think anything about it when you grew up like that. Just there's one county there in West Virginia, McDowell County. We call it the Free State of McDowell. And that's where my mom and dad grew up. And it's so poverty stricken now that even Walmart and Kmart moved out.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's terrible down there. You feel so sorry for the people. Most of them were coal miners, and those coal mines didn't mine the correct kind of coal or whatever it was. And then the drugs come in, just like you talked about. Yeah, and
beautiful states, man. West Virginia, Kentucky, beautiful states, but the economy
they can get very cliquish and clannish too.
Oh yeah, they can.
So yes, they can. And I've never told you this, Rob, but just so you know, my great grandfather is John C. Hatfield. My great grandmother is Lucinda McCoy.
Are you serious?
Yep. So that's the Hatfield McCoy coming together. We're related to both sides.
Oh my God, you hate yourself, don't you?
Sometimes.
I just can't stand myself sometimes.
Yeah, it depends on what the argument is, which way I go.
Yeah. So yeah, I did that, and that was a fun time. I did UC a couple of times, but it was usually like dry meats. Just only because it wasn't my thing. Now we had a guy in my squad, man. That guy was a beast when he came to undercover work. He was so good that later on, when I went to counterterrorism, I used him. Oh, that guy could talk to anybody. They called him the fast talking Yankee. That guy, he could talk to anybody, man. You just drop him and he'll do the rest. But that just wasn't my thing.
Yeah. And that, not to get off on a tangent, but we're going to. There was a guy I worked with in Miami, DEA, Pete Sarin, who's dead now, God rest his soul. But Pete was like that, man. He was FBI before he came over to DEA. I think he was originally from New York or New Jersey, and he was going bald, and he was fancying himself as the ladies' man. So he was having the hair plugs put in, looked like a baby doll's head. And he would go do undercover with bandages, oozing blood.
Oh my God.
Nobody ever thought he was a cop. But we were doing a surveillance on this long-term case. I'd gone down undercover with some other guys, and we picked up 400 kilos of coke. At that time, that's the biggest dope seizure I'd ever seen in my life. Before that, the most I'd ever seen was 2 ounces. And this was my first undercover with DEA. We picked up 400 kilos down the Turks and Caicos Islands. So we come back and we're going to do a controlled delivery. And there's one lady who was kind of in charge of this organization. And we're following around, and Pete he was terrible at surveillance. He'd lock bumpers with him. You know what that means. He's getting way too close. And we've got 12, 14 cars out there. You can roll people in and out. And you can do parallel streets and all kinds of things. And Pete would just lock bumpers with her. And we're telling him, Pete, back off. You're too close. Well, she parks and goes into this building, doesn't look around or anything. So we've got eyeballs set up on both ends of the street. She can't get out without us seeing her. And lo and behold, whoever's got the eyeball calls out that she's coming out to get in her car. Pete drives down the damn street. It's like, Pete, don't, man, you're going to blow it. She gets out of her car and gets out in the middle of the street and stops him. Why are you following me? I've seen you too many times now. What's going on here? And he put the moves on her like, baby, I saw you at the shopping center over there, and I just thought you're the hottest thing I've ever seen in my life. And he's just laying on, and she fell for it.
Oh, my God. That's hilarious.
So they exchanged numbers. So eventually when we arrested her, we got her locked up there at the DEA building down in Miami at the Koger Center. And Pete comes walking in to talk to her. She's like, "Oh, you son of a bitch. I thought you liked me."
That's hilarious.
Yeah, I was never quick enough to come with that kind of stuff.
Yeah, neither was I, man. It just wasn't my thing. I did it, if they asked me, but I never volunteered for it.
Yeah. You not only did that, but I was looking at your resume and found you on LinkedIn. You were involved in the FBI Safe Streets Task Force. You were involved in intel, labor trafficking, counterterrorism.
Yes. So I was part of Safe Streets twice. Once as a deputy in the gang unit, and then once as an agent. The agency that I work at now.
Can you explain what Safe Streets is?
Yeah, so Safe Streets it's the violent crimes gang task force, if you will, for the FBI, and I was there twice, like I said.
You guys are you deputized federally?
Yes, and
that's a good thing, because not only do you have state jurisdiction, but now you've got federal jurisdiction too.
Correct. And the FBI, they have tons of resources, and it was a multi-agency task force. So it wasn't just obviously deputies and then my agency, but we had some of the municipalities that were part of the task force also. And we did some stuff there, but I always enjoyed doing kind of like my own thing. The best cases that I've ever worked, Steve, were stuff that I come up in the shower. Like the labor trafficking case. I had a boss that I would just sit down and say, "Hey, I want to work a Chinese labor trafficking case." And he goes, "Does it fit our mission?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Yes." I said, "Then why are you asking? Start working." It's a form of human trafficking. It's just on the labor side. There could be a combination of it is human trafficking, but there's no sex and there's no sexual act involved. It's just restaurants and places like that. Unfortunately,
like labor.
Yeah, exactly. And I thought it was a really good case, but at the time, if you took a case, we worked a lot like the feds. We have a prosecutor on board early on. Where I'm at now, not at the county level, but where I'm now, we work that way. And if the U.S. attorney found out that you had talked to the statewide prosecutor, they didn't want to even look at it. They didn't want to touch it. And man, we had an HSI agent that spoke Mandarin. We had him on board. Surveillances, financial records, business records. And unfortunately, I developed it as much as I could. And man, I regret not being able to finish that case, because they're like, yeah, we're not going to be able to prove it. But that's a matter of opinion. I thought we could have developed it if we had the time. But yeah, so I did the dope thing. And then I wanted to be done with that. They were starting a new intel initiative. So I volunteered for that, a criminal intel. And then in October of 2015, I get called into the big man's office, and he's like, "Listen, we're going to make you," and I was going through the promotional process. And he's like, "We're going to make you an acting supervisor." I had done the written, I hadn't done my panel yet. Mm-hmm. And we're going to put you over economic crimes. I'm like, all right, not my thing, but it is what it is. I'll take it. And 2 days later, I get called back in, and he's like, "Scratch economic crimes." I'm like, so I'm not going to get my extra money. It's like, no. We're starting a new counterterrorism initiative, and we want to be ahead of every other region within the state. So we want you to start the first CT squad for the agency. And I call it the honor of creating the very first CT squad for my agency in the state. And I ran that for 5 years. I supervised it for 5 years. And we did some really cool stuff that most like local state level guys don't get to do. I responded to the Pulse nightclub attack in 2016. I learned how just about any terrorist event in the globe has a nexus to Florida. I'm not going to say not every, but you'd be surprised how many terror events throughout the globe have ties to Florida. There's some sort of a nexus. Boston bombing had a nexus to Florida. There was actually an officer-involved shooting here in Orlando, and this has been in the news. They were doing the follow-up interview, and they brought a JTTF FBI agent and a Massachusetts State Police trooper to do an interview here in Orlando. And they got into a shootout in an apartment living room. But that was part of the follow-up of the Boston bomber. The first U.S.-born suicide bomber in Syria from Florida. One of the Paris attacks. I mean, it got to a point where whoever was in charge of the counterterrorism program at the FBI level, one of the first calls that he made whenever there was an incident, a terror attack, was to call the ASAC in Orlando, the FBI ASAC, and ask him, have you found a nexus yet? Because more often than not, there was some sort of a nexus to the state of Florida.
Well, we're like a criminal magnet down here.
Yeah. But man, and let me tell you, I loved CT. Because you get to do so many things and you get to learn so much. You're doing
a lot of travel with it?
Not so much. I went initially for the training. I did a lot of travel. Now, mind you, I was supervising too. One of the guys that I was supervising, he traveled a lot. I mean, this guy, he's a TFO. My agency, he's a TFO with the FBI. He's training new FBI agents on CT, and he's traveling. He's going to Germany and doing interviews and managing. Officially, they can't manage sources. They can be a secondary. But but you get to work with some units that you would never work before as a regular cop, and you get to do a lot of cool things, man, and be exposed to a lot of things. And there were some things that we did that were, and we had we built such a good relationship with the FBI that there were times, you know how it is in the Fed system that the wheels turn pretty slow. They would call and say, hey, can you guys run this on the state side? Because it moves so much quicker. And we would do it. We would take a case from them, move it on, take it on the state side, not necessarily charge them with anything terrorism related, but if you charge them with possession of a firearm, you're still mitigating the problem.
Right. So, and you're getting the foot in the door with these criminals to see, I mean, what can you exploit out of this? Yeah,
exactly. So that was fun times.
What's I guess the biggest counterterrorism case you ever worked on that you can talk? I don't know if you can talk about it yet or not.
Let me see. We did. This was out. Well, actually, we arrested a guy that shortly after the San Antonio Walmart attack was planning a similar attack. We intercepted him, and then we worked a case where there was an absconder from a cruise line that we arrested him, and he had ties to international terrorist organization.
Jeez.
Yeah. So yeah, you get to do really, really cool things that normally you wouldn't be exposed to.
With our small town police blotter and then the section I have on Patreon about stupid criminals, I make a joke that I try to teach my children you can be a leader or you can be a follower. And I try to teach my kids to be leaders, and some listen to me and some don't. Mm-hmm. But so I make that same analysis when it comes to criminals. In Florida, we decided we want to be the leader of stupid criminals.
Of course. Of course. It's so funny because my friend in Texas sends me like, hey, Florida man stories. And the other day there was a story about a guy from Texas that stole a boat here in Miami, drove it down to Cuba, came back and got arrested. And I sent my friend the news story. Says, look, my two worlds just collided. Texas man and Florida man.
So somewhere along the line there, you got involved with St. Petersburg College. How did that happen? And what's your involvement?
So in 2005, when I was a deputy, I was kind of early on in working gangs. I went to the basic gang identification course, and my sergeant just kind of like leaned over and said, hey, you'd be good teaching this. I'm like, you think? And he's like, yeah. So I talked to one of the instructors. And they were representing St. Pete College, MCTFT, which is the multi-jurisdictional counter-drug task force training. And he put me in contact with the coordinator, and they're like, all right, we'll give you a shot. And I've been teaching since 2005. I started with gang identification. Then I was able to travel to El Salvador from 2014 to 2020 to the pandemic, about 3-4 times a year as part of the community policing program. And I was teaching gang identification and criminal intelligence. But at the same time, I was learning a ton from them, because this is El Salvador then, not Bukele's El Salvador. Actually, Bukele was the mayor of San Salvador when I was traveling down there. So I was exposed to, national police from Panama, Belize, Honduras, Guatemala. So I'm learning from all these people, and I'm learning about gang trends and, how they operate down in Central America, in the Northern Triangle. So I haven't done gang identification in years. I mainly teach gang investigative strategies, and gang trends is mainly what I teach. Now I have a couple of courses that I've put together. Like I put a violent extremism and the gang connection, because that's my two worlds, counterterrorism and gangs. So I have a course that I put together for that. And then I have another one that I've never taught it, but it's CT strategies for state and local. How can local agencies, without directly working counterterrorism, how they can benefit the CT mission?
So all your students are law enforcement then, right?
That is correct. Yes.
It's not open to any of the students at the college?
No, it's all cops, corrections, probation, prosecutors. And I've been fortunate, man. I've been to Peru, El Salvador, Puerto Rico, all over the United States, Dominican Republic last year. So I've been very fortunate when it comes to that.
I'll tell you, I love the travel. I loved it with DEA, and I love it what I'm doing now. You get to travel around the world, and somebody else pays for it.
That's the best part, when somebody else pays for it.
Yeah, it's true. And then, as if you're not busy enough, in 2021, what'd you do? Created an LLC?
Yes, I did. That is correct. And so now as of December of 2024, I quote unquote quit the college, and now I'm a contract through the LLC, which is Intelligence Training Group. And I also have a group of instructors that I can reach out to. Opportunity came up in Dominican Republic to teach de-escalation techniques. I called a friend of mine from Puerto Rico, DOJ, retired, and we went down to Dominican Republic, and I got different people that human trafficking and, that have different expertises that I can reach out to and provide training.
You've got a real entrepreneurial side to you, because I'm thinking, with the agency, even at Orange County, you're getting involved in different things there. You're not turning down anything that's offered to you. And then you go to the agency you're at now, and you're creating units and running units. And then simply because somebody said, hey, you'd be good teaching this class, you get involved as an adjunct professor. Right. Then you start your own company. And we mentioned on yesterday's podcast episode that you started your own podcast.
Right. And honestly, that's kind of your fault that I started doing that. I blame that on you.
When are those royalty checks going to start coming in?
When I start seeing any.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? Isn't that the truth?
But yeah, man, you know what, man, I enjoy it so much, and the stories, and obviously you start with friends. Our first guest, you actually had him on, which was Eddie Diaz, and I was I didn't know Eddie before, but I specifically wanted Eddie to be our first guest because his incident happened 2 weeks into FTO. And for those that haven't listened or don't remember, Eddie was shot 8 times in the middle of a traffic stop, and his partner, George DeSalvia, died in the incident. And I wanted Eddie to be the first guest because that incident made it real for me. You know, you watch videos in the academy, stuff like that, but now you're out there, you're wearing the uniform. That could be you doing a traffic stop at, 2:00 in the morning. And, yeah, we've had some good, really good guests, man. I usually, again, pulling from my friends pool, 9/11 responders, Pulse responders, had a couple of Green Berets, which one of them I sent you the contact information so you could reconnect with him. Yeah. And because you guys spent time together at the same time in Medellin. So yeah. And then I feel fortunate that I was able to at least put you in contact with one of our guests and you were able to interview him. But I'm grateful that I've been able to also get some guests from you. Absolutely. We're scheduling with Tyler Schwab next week. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that because I want to bring on obviously we're not going to show their image, but I want to bring a survivor also of human trafficking that can talk to to that life.
Yeah, I'm not going to say the young lady's name, but I'm an honorary member of the board of directors for the Southern California Gang Conference, and every May we go out and have a week-long conference. And I got Tyler in as a speaker this year to talk about human trafficking because he runs Libertas International out of Medellin. And he brought a survivor with him. And this young lady, I thought she was 16, 17 years old. She's 32, 33 years old, married, got 2 daughters of her own. Mm. But if you remember that movie that Operation Underground Railroad came out with, Sound of Freedom.
Sound of Freedom.
That's her story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but it's not factual.
Well, it's a movie. Wait, hold on. So they do that? Hollywood does that?
Well, not in Narcos. Everything you saw in Narcos was true.
Got it.
If you believe that, Robin, I've got some swampland down here. We'll give you a good price for it.
Yeah.
No, but I love that guy, Tyler. I bring him on every 6 months. We were just swapping emails and text messages here during the past week, because they got a guy sentenced to life in prison down in Miami.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
What a pervert. What a freaking pervert.
Well, good for him. He earned it. He deserves every day he gets.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I hope he lives a tough life in prison like we know he will. And when you're talking to Tyler, ask him why he's spending so much time in the United States. Because he's under death threats.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, it's too dangerous for him to go down. I have this kid, look at him as I got sons that are older than him. And this kid at 23 years old just takes it on himself to go do something. I just can't say enough good things about him. I think the world of him.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
And then you had Chris Feistel on there recently.
So, yeah, I had Chris Feistel. He apologized about 20 times about his Spanish, and he did great. I said, look, man, you have a Cuban that was born in California, 2 Puerto Ricans that have been here for 40 years. You probably speak proper Spanish better than we do. That was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun. And then we had Leo Silva. Mm-hmm.
Leo got a hell of a story.
Yeah, man, that was a great episode. Actually, that one comes out this coming Monday. Part 1 comes out this coming Monday, and then we started communicating with some other people that he and I talked about, and you and I have talked about. So we're going back and forth with some other people to have them on the show.
Well, brother, I've told you this before, and your partners as well, and it still holds true. Whatever I can do to help you guys, introduce you, you guys probably know more about the podcasting business than I do now. But that's the way I look at it, is brothers helping brothers. And just because we retire, I got this corny saying, just because we retire doesn't mean our oath expired.
And it's actually, you know what? I stole that from you, because when I had these made, and my friend sent me these, and it has like if you're listening on a audio platform, you can't see it, but actually on the bottom it says, "Nuestro juramento no expira."
Yeah, it doesn't expire.
Yeah.
I love it.
So I'm stealing stuff from you left and right.
Brother, we're in this together.
No, but man, it's rewarding, because there's so much negative sentiment towards law enforcement right now, that being able to bring these stories and highlighting them, I think it's worth, especially in the Spanish speaking community, because we still haven't found a platform where LEOs can tell their stories. So we're just, and again, we enjoy doing it. And, that's why we do it.
Well, and I mean too, I was a cop for 38 years. I don't really know how to do a lot of other things, and really don't have a whole lot of interest in doing other things, except getting my voice back here. So, I mean, the invitation's always open. You know where I live. You got my contact information. We'll continue to support each other.
We appreciate it.
I wanted to, before we finish up here though, a couple of things I want to point out is, you did so well with the gang investigations that the Florida Gang Investors Association has awarded you a combat award, 3 unit citations, 2 awards of commendation, and 2 unit of the year awards.
Well, that wasn't the FGIA. That was the agency. Actually, that's from multiple agencies. Okay. Well, the combat was from the sheriff's office, and then you had the unit of the year, and yeah. So it wasn't. Now, when I was in the gang unit, we were selected out of the 5 years that I was there. We were selected the gang unit of the year 3 times. 3 years in a row, actually, almost. So yeah, I've been very blessed, man. I try to stay, I guess, humbled, because it's, I've just been very blessed professionally. I can't complain.
Well, and for our listeners, you can tell, you've heard me say before, if you've got to toot your own horn, it's probably not worth tooting. And that's, I'm having to ask direct questions of you to get you to tell me information. There's a couple of things that we agreed to before we started that we wouldn't mention on here, and that's fine too, because this show is not about embarrassing law enforcement, first responders, or military heroes. It's all about promoting them in the most positive light, so that listeners get to hear the bravery, the dedication, the commitment, the sacrifice that's required to do a job where you're helping your fellow citizens. And a lot of them hate you just because of the job you have. They would just as soon see you and your family die as to have you come and help them. But I mean, we don't discriminate. You try to help everybody you can. It's and boy, I could go off on that, but then my language starts going downhill, and I'm trying to improve that. So I want to ask you one more question before you go. Do you have any words of wisdom or advice for, I don't know, say people that are interested in maybe a law enforcement career, or going into the military, or just any other words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with here?
Listen, if you want to live a life of service, I think there is no better career, me personally, because this is what I've chosen, law enforcement. Obviously, serving the country is super important as a veteran, and as a relative of veterans also. But I came on, I'm what I call the cops generation. We grew up watching cops, and that's what influenced us. Like you guys, you were the Miami Vice guys, and that's why you wanted to go to DEA, so we were all influenced. but you have to know, man. And I tell you this, Steve, because I learned it the hard way. Do not lose focus on your family or your spiritual life.
Absolutely.
You can't lose focus on either one of them. I'm in a great place right now. You met my daughter and you met my wife. I have my 2 sons. But it was a hard lesson to learn. Professionally, I've, done great. Personally, I'd made some mistakes as an immature cop, and being a better dad and cop than a husband the first time around. But keep that in mind if you're going to go into this profession. Do keep in mind, and I know the story that you tell about the guy in the academy that didn't know that DEA carry guns. Yeah. Do keep in mind that at some point you may have to take a life, and if that's something you can live with, then okay, then yeah, this is for you. But don't wait until you get your ass handed to you the first time in uniform to say, "Oh, this is not for me," because you're going to get yourself or somebody else hurt. But if I were to choose a career all over again, I would do it all over again. It's a different type of policing nowadays. We didn't have body cams. At the most, we had some dash cams. But there were no cell phones, no Ring cameras. There was no, body cams. And not that would stop you from doing something maybe that you shouldn't be doing as a cop, but it plays in the back of your head. You second guess yourself. But I think it's a wonderful career, man. And I would do it all over again. So if you've committed to a life of service and this is how you choose to do it, but maintain a balance, man. Don't sacrifice your family or your health for that matter. We didn't even talk about LEO suicide rates. Don't compromise your health or your family or your spiritual life.
That's and excellent words of advice. And I hadn't even thought about touching on this police suicide. I've recently gotten involved with an organization called the Lucas Foundation, based out of Detroit, Michigan. It came up through the acting special agent in charge of HSI in Detroit, who we're friends on LinkedIn. Now we're personal friends, but he's associated with Brian Sizemore, who started the Lucas Foundation. And the Lucas Foundation is named after Lucas Sizemore, his son, who became a police officer in Atlanta 4 months on the job. And this was back in early 24. So it's just been a little over a year. In the middle of the night, just got up and went in his bathroom in his apartment and got inside the bathtub and shot himself, killed himself. And to this day, nobody seems to know why. But his dad and his mom didn't let his death go in vain. They've started the Lucas Foundation, so they're doing some fundraising to bring more awareness to the problem. The numbers are, I think the average number of police suicides is something like 184 a year. And I might be wrong.
It's more than line of duty deaths, and it has been for like the last 10 years.
It's the leading cause of death of police officers.
It is,
and they are, and this is. So I'll just throw this out there for the Lucas Foundation. In September, they're doing a little run from Atlanta to Detroit, a 1,000-mile run, the relay, and it's all to raise money. If you're interested, you can go to the lucasfoundation.org. Get more information about it. They've got stops along the way, and you don't run 1,000 miles. You just run a leg of it, whatever you want to do to try to raise money. Mm-hmm. And they've all the checkpoints are police offices from Atlanta to Detroit. I just think it's one of the coolest things I've ever heard of.
That's awesome.
So if you want to know more about that, lucasfoundation.org, check them out. And if one thing to go along with what you were saying there on your advice is your family has to be on board with you. If you're going to go into law enforcement, especially if you're going to go in the military, we're going to be deployed. At least in law enforcement, we get to go home most nights because this becomes a lifestyle. It's not just a 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. They're the ones I refer to them as our unsung heroes because we expect them to take care of everything at home while we go do what we think is what our calling is. But I mean, the truth is, in my mind, we're still little kids and we're doing things that are exciting that we want to do.
Yeah, we're overgrown children.
Yeah. Never grow up.
Yep.
So if people want to find out more about Mr. Hernandez here, you can go his podcast. Check this out, Llamados a Servir. And I'm going to put a little sign up here because of those of you that don't speak Spanish or those that you do speak Spanish, but you don't understand my hillbilly Spanish, you'll know where to find that out. I highly encourage you. Now, it is in Spanish language, so if you don't speak Spanish, you might be a little lost. You can find Rob here on Instagram at Rob Hernandez26. Facebook, I found him at Llamados a Servir Podcast. TikTok, I found you at Roberto Hernandez60 and Llamados a Servir. And on LinkedIn, I think that's probably one of the strongest platforms, Roberto Hernandez.
Yeah. And we have a YouTube channel also, which is youtube.com/at Llamados a Servir Podcast. And we upload the videos and some educational videos that we upload.
Love it. Man, it's been an honor to have you on here. I'm glad that we did this. I'm glad we were just catching up on some other things. And I thought, well, crap, why haven't I ever invited him over here?
Well, I'm humbled and I really appreciate the opportunity to come out here and just sit down and talk to you.
Well, I'm honored that you agreed to do this, and I'm very happy that we've become friends down here. And honestly, I don't have a whole lot of friends here in Florida other than cops. Hey, that's the way it was when I was on the job.
Yeah, exactly. So nothing's changed.
Pretty much. So thank you, brother. Thank you very much. We appreciate your openness and your honesty and being able to share stories with us, especially the officer-involved shooting and the related demons that come along with that. We've had quite a few people come on here and talk about that, and everybody, it's different. There's no book that says do step A, B, C, and D, and you'll get rid of PTSD or anxiety or depression.
Correct.
But here's one thing I will say to our listeners: if you need help, you don't have to go anything alone. Just dial. We have a national number, 988. It's the Suicide and Crisis Hotline. It's manned 7/24/365. They speak English and Spanish. It's in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. If they cannot help you on the phone, they will put you in touch with somebody that can give you some help. So please, if you're going through things and you just think you can't handle it anymore, please call 988. And you're seeing it on the screen here because I'm putting it up on a little card. 988. That's all you got to do. You can even text it. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to tell them where you are. You don't have to tell them who you are. But please don't do the worst thing that you could do and take your life. We care about you here on Game of Crimes. I know they care about you on Yamato Sasever. Just get the help you need. So, absolutely. Listeners, thank you folks again for coming back every week. Thanks you for bearing with me and my hillbilly Spanish here, and had a good time today and with Roberto here. I'm sure this relationship's going to continue. One of these days, we'll tell you who he really works for.
Yeah, when I pull the plug.
Maybe a 3-letter agency. You never know. You just have to stick around with Game of Crimes before you find out, won't you? But thank you for coming back. I don't understand why you do, but in reality, I think I do, because you love to play the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, and that's the Game of Crimes. Until next week, God bless. We'll see you then.